Good evening. This edition of Democratic Visions features two powerful commentaries.
One of the hardest days I've ever had.
State Senator Steve Cwodzinski pleads for more effective gun laws. And community leader Ahmed Jama speaks to being a Somali-American during Operation Metro Surge.
But first, we return to a recurring theme of this series, the state of American journalism and the current state of the nation.
With everything that was happening in January, especially in Minnesota.
Mikki Morrissette is owner, publisher, and editor of Minnesota Women's Press, the longest continually published feminist magazine in the nation. Morrissette was honored in November as Journalist of the Year by Violence Free Minnesota, a coalition to end relationship abuse.
There's a problem, I think, that we get into silos.
Mike McIntee has a long list of journalism credentials, including the All News Network, AM 950 Radio, and The Uptake. Here's Mike with Mikki.
Democracy and journalism is under attack. Those of us in the news business, like myself and Mikki, have known that for a long time, but 2026, I think, has shown the general public that this is the case, isn't it, Mikki?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen journalism has been dealing with, various different tools. Social media's made a huge impact. Newspapers can't afford to stay open. There's so many different ways that journalism has been changing in the time that we've been in it. But the thing that's really striking me the most is as we see Washington Post's demise, the heyday, that golden age of when we were starting in journalism ourselves, with Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward, and seeing how relentlessly they were piling up facts to figure out what was happening at the White House. That is what the best of journalism is, and there's still people doing that, but there's so many things that are pulling it apart.
One of those things pulling it apart, our own government. People, journalists getting arrested, Georgia Fort here, as we all remember, getting hauled away for reporting on something that happened. That feels really, really wrong. And it's just the fact that that is a threat can have a chilling effect on what people report and say. And that just is not what that whole First Amendment thing was supposed to be about.
Yeah, we know that there's people that have been thinking the media is elite and that the media is biased. That's been a big thing for quite a while. But the fact that Georgia was there simply reporting with others, and that was seen as a form of almost protest or civil disobedience, it just shows how the definition of what some people believe is wrong has gotten really tweaked.
So many things happened here at the beginning of the year with Operation Metro Surge that, we could fill an hour just talking about that, but I think we've had enough of that.
Yeah.
But just a couple of things that stand out to me. The whole idea that picking up a phone makes you either a protester or a journalist, depending on who's talking about it. Mm-hmm. I hear the national media talking about people who had phones as being protesters, but they were observing what was going on. And my response to them is, you've got people out there with cameras, they're journalists. So we have a whole problem here of what defining who is what in the mix of all these things, mm-hmm. and how that impacts what people's roles are. What are the roles? Should we even try to define, who a journalist is and who isn't?
I think we do need, it needs to be shaken up certainly, because everybody does have a social media account and everybody does have a phone and everybody has the potential to share information and without any vetting, and so I do think we need to redefine what journalism, especially the journalism of the future, is going to look like, because I am always very optimistic that the things that are part of our Constitution might be shifting a lot right now, but journalism is just like the Justice Department, is there for a reason, and we'll figure out how it's going to look different, But I think we do need to define, and we do need to educate, what is media literacy, how can you tell if something's true or not, what's the process that people need to go through, and we need to get smarter as a whole around that. And then journalism also needs to adapt to the fact that influencers are out there. Georgia Fort herself is somebody who she was in mainstream television media. Then things kind of she moved back here. Things adjusted in her life. She didn't quite get the jobs that she wanted, so she created her own media entity. I'm from Minnesota Women's Press, and that was how we started. I mean, the founders of it 40 years ago recognized women were not in anything but the lifestyle page, so they decided to create media. People have YouTube channels and all sorts of things. So yeah, how do we define, is a social influencer on YouTube media?
Yeah, and also we've kind of taken a check out of this. It used to be when anything got published, you were subject to potential libel laws. And that's technically still the case, but when you put it on, the publisher is, Facebook or YouTube. And because of the way we've written laws here now, they're exempt from all this stuff. And so you'd have to go after the person who has, who put that up, who has absolutely no money, so they don't make a great libel target. And so people are free to say whatever they want, which is fine, but then there's no accountability,
Yeah, I think that's kind of the key word in so many things: accountability. Enforcement accountability, political accountability, journalism accountability. Can you say whatever you want? I think, we saw when Alex Preddy was killed, how many people had so many different versions of what happened that day, even though there was video that seemed clear. But we know AI manipulates things as well. So how do we develop the kind of media using all of the tools that we have that people can trust, or at least know this is not really true, this is fake?
I mean, there are so many models for journalism. The main one used to be that there was advertising. And that model has been broken by, Google and Craigslist and everything else. How do we what's the model for journalism, not just from a sustainability standpoint, but from a standpoint of telling things so that the public actually wants to look at what we're doing?
Yeah, you're actually, I think, also hitting on the piece of, with everything that was happening in January, especially in Minnesota, and people wanting to turn away from things. Some people, doom scrolling was certainly a thing. You want to see what's happening this moment, but then it's also so stressful, and there's a lot of people that feel like news is just bad, so why pay any attention to it? And so I think that's another one of the challenges journalism has.
We were talking before about what's lacking in a lot of reporting, or what's in a lot of reporting, I should say, is this: conflict. Conflict gets clicks, conflict gets news coverage, conflict shows up on the television real well, but there's other aspects to the story. What's missing when you fill it up with conflict, we were talking about this, is community voices, is people who really are part of the story, being able to talk about it in a way that somebody else might be engaged. I mean, how do we fix that?
Yeah. I do think that's where journalism does need to be shifting. Who is it talking to? Grassroots or people who are normally at the podium? I was at an NPR town hall a couple weeks ago, and one of the people in the audience said, media is focusing on the wrong things. Media is focusing on, like you said, the fights and the confrontations, and the he said, she said, or they've described it as the fights between political leaders. A lot of people feel like that's all media does, but we also know some of the smaller independent spaces. Sahan Journal in Minnesota is a really good example of that. They're really getting stuff that's at the grassroots level. And I feel like that's where we can sort of rescue what the best of journalism is. that it is the people at the ground level. We put so much investment into political leaders and corporate, as consumers, we invest and prop up a lot of the corporate stuff. We're actually the power, we're the people power. And if we focused more on that, I feel like some things might start to shift.
Well, let's talk about something related to that, and that's narrative, okay? Because when I started in this business, you had an editor or assignment editor or somebody who would say, well, here's the stories we're going to do today, and assigns them out to the reporters. And this is what I expect you to come back with. I've already decided in my mind what the story is and how it's going to happen. And occasionally there'd be the reporter came back with what we'd call an enterprise story and say, I've talked to so-and-so, this is a great story, let's do this. And we'd have that. But we had so much of this, there's going to be a news conference, we're going to want this guy to talk, we're going to want this guy to talk, and you've got 1:30 to tell it, and it's going to go in second block or first block or whatever it may be. Then it was predetermined.
Yeah.
The day was, because you needed to plan. You needed to plan somehow, and that was how we did it. But the narrative got controlled by the persons that were doing this, who most of the time were white males, older white males, and that was this perspective that was given to all of the news. Now, thankfully, that has changed, but that still happens. That's still going on. I think we still need to deconstruct that.
Yeah, the one of the positives I see is I'm in a national cohort of independent publishers who are all at that ground level. No money, not a lot of structure. Generally, it's one or two people. It's exhausting, but they do recognize that that's what's missing from a lot, and that's what people need to be able to see and relate to what's in their lives. And I do feel like that's how the journalism of the future can actually revitalize. Again, assuming everything hasn't been completely tamped down.
Yeah, that's nice republic if you can keep it. I think somebody once said nice journalism if you can keep it, or a newspaper, or whatever it may be. Most of them are going away. I saw this earlier. A study. I want to connect this and talk about engagement. Okay, because that's the word that gets tossed around, and you measure it by clicks and whatever, but I really measure it by how people remember what you talked about and how they employ it in their lives. And studies showed that lower income people don't vote because they feel politics is a game for the rich and they aren't heard. And I think journalism has some responsibility for that, doesn't it?
Yeah, I do think, I would also say that the whole divide that we have now, where people see things in completely different ways, is because journalism has been able to set itself up in different camps. So people who are paying attention in this certain silo are going to see things in a completely different way and be in that bubble with others that feel the same way. And I do think journalism has the responsibility of trying to have people who are living experiences be the center of the story. I'm in the twilight of my career, and I know that's the thing that I'm enjoying the most about what we do, is that we get everyday people that have been submitting, for example, essays about how they're feeling about what they see going on in Minnesota, how they feel about the mutual aid work that they're doing. And I think that's the thing that can still, it's also, there's values embedded in that. And I think the divide that we have can be minimized if we start recognizing, oh, this is what this person cares about, this is why, and you hear and you listen to other people's perspectives. I think that's the best of what journalism can do. The news storytelling is certainly still very, very important, because otherwise things get put under the rug, as we know. But I do think that the thing about journalism that's wonderful is it enables us to sort of experience and learn about other people's lives, other impacts, and I think we need a lot more of that.
Going back to what I was talking about with the narrative, a lot of what I was talking about determined what was going to get covered.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's something that people don't really understand, is that everybody thinks, oh, there's a standard definition of what the news is today. It's that talking head down at City Hall or the White House or down in that congressional hearing. That's the news. Well, yeah, that might be part of the news. But there's so much more and so many other things that I think that narrow definition of, a certain person's viewpoint of what the news is needs to get busted apart. And it has been happening, but we need more of that. And so how do we do that without just completely tearing apart everything?
Yeah, I would also add to what you just said that there's a competition always in journalism to get a certain story or to get it first, and then there's such limited resources for journalism to sustain journalism that I think that's really punching a hole in our capabilities. However, again, we in Minnesota are really privileged because we've got Sahan Journal, we've got MinPost, we've got Minnesota Reformer, we've got Minnesota Women's Press, Star Tribune's out there, NPR, and a lot of places don't have that. So they either don't get any perspective or they get a very limited perspective. We have choices here, which is amazing. There's still also a hugely vibrant newspaper industry around the small towns of Minnesota, and I've connected with some of them who are, we just had the Minnesota Newspaper Association gathering, and it was a ballroom full of people that this is what they do, and they know it's important, though sometimes it's just to bring community together to talk about the local high school sports team. But I do think that's the piece of journalism we have to figure out how to sustain, because it is dying all over.
There's a problem, I think, that we get into silos. People choose to look at certain media that, as Stephen Colbert would say, would have a problem with truthiness. And that people being able to decide what is real and true and what is not, I think we're losing that ability, or maybe it was never taught. And we were talking about this before we started, is that we really need some media literacy, don't we?
Yeah, media literacy, and as you mentioned, civic lessons. And there too, I think they can go hand in hand, but we have to put resources behind it. I do think some youth are able to still get into journalism in a way, but I don't think it's the way we were taught. And I know that when I've gone to a lot of different colleges, it really is very focused on social media. So how do you work with that inevitability, and every single individual then has their own narrative?
Yeah, I think it goes back to we're not teaching civics in schools as much as we should, and hand in hand with civics should be just how do you decide what is right, not right or wrong, but what is true, or how do you check it out? And I think just giving people those basic skills when they're in grade school even, to be able to discern what is something is real or not real is going to help us a lot in getting to an atmosphere where truth reigns as opposed to gets buried. Who was it? Mark Twain who said the truth is still putting on its pants while the lies running around the world.
I haven't heard that one.
You haven't heard that one? I think that's the problem we have right now. The lies are running around on social media, and the truth still doesn't have its pants on.
Yeah. So we do have to reframe how we do what we do and bring the audience with us.
And then with respect to guns, I don't know. It's like 80% of the people in Minnesota want to ban on assault weapons. It's not 53 to 47. It's not all Republicans, all Democrats. It's like 80%. And one of the hardest things
Last December, Senators Steve Cwodzinski and Brad Canham talked about the need for gun control measures that would reduce mass killings in schools and suicides.
Because the hardest day I ever had in the classroom, pre-cell phone, was walking into a classroom and finding out during passing time we had another school shooting. And I walk into the classroom and I'd say to the 35 kids, there was another school shooting. And I would give anything to have had the foresight to put a hidden camera behind my shoulder and to record. Because if we showed parents and taxpayers and Minnesotans and Americans a video clip of a teacher announcing to a class of 35 kids that we had another school shooting today, and the looks on their faces voices were like, can't you adults handle this? Can't you keep us safe? Don't you care about our well-being? I am scared to be here, and you're not doing it. And the looks on their faces. Well, anyway, so this day I get this text from this former student, from a colleague of mine about, like I said, Sandy Hook or Parkland. I'm like devastated. I'm thinking thoughts like that. And what's going on in this country? Most people want bans of assault weapons and whatnot. And then like a couple hours later, I'm sitting on the floor, and one of my favorite all-time students, of top 10 students of all time, as a young man, 23, 24 years old, bought a firearm that day and decided to take his life. And so in one day, I had two stories of violence, of firearms. And I just want to remind everybody out there, we're talking a lot about assault weapons and things that are happening in our schools and mass shootings at Annunciation and other locations, but we can't lose sight that the number one cause of death of 18-year-old people and younger is gun violence, and the majority of that isn't mass shooting, it's self-inflicted. And so there's two things going on here. One is assault weapons and mass shootings, and also that our young people are giving up on life and taking their life into their own hands by ending it. And tragic. It just bums me out more than anything is when I find out former students of mine as young adults decided that.
Street houses not one, not two, but 3 child care centers.
This is all propaganda. We are hard workers. We contribute to the economy. We are peaceful people, yet we are getting attacked day in and day out.
Our friend Ahmed Jama returns to Democratic Visions to weigh in on derogatory White House accusations targeting Somali-Americans.
He's saying Somalis are garbage.
Ahmed majored in business at Eastern Kentucky University in the 1980s. He has managed truck drivers for a Pennsylvania firm and driven cabs in New York City. He and wife Malioun moved to Minnesota in 1998. Ahmed soon became a community leader in Eden Prairie, voicing concerns, for starters, about the learning gap.
When we first came here, the first few years, the gap between white students and Somalis was like 42 points.
He also supported the Southwest Light Rail project. It would help Eden Prairie and Somalis.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Thanks for this opportunity.
Ahmed Jama has also called for better responses to climate change, affordable housing, and toxic politics.
This is Democratic Visions. Here's producer Jeff Strait.
Times are different right now. What's it like being a Somali in Eden Prairie and Savage in Minnesota right now?
Well, Jeff, it has been beautiful since the Somalis came in the middle of the 90s. We were welcomed. We made Minnesota our home. We contributed to the economy. Our kids go to school, and we filled a lot of needs, work needs, and we were doing extremely well until we got attacked by the White House. Somalis are garbage. They don't do nothing for this country. None of that's true. Somalis, if I tell you economically, they pay 67 million taxes every year, and they are very small. And in the census 2010 and census 2020, if you put the whites aside, Somalis were number 1 in employment, number 1 the kids that go to college, number 1 entrepreneurial, people who create small business. That's an achievement. It's a federal statistics. I doubt the White House reads that. And now Trump supporters and Trump himself is saying Somalis are garbage. They came from a shithole country. They should go back. It's not even a country. If you want to know whether Somalia is a country or not, you don't ask Donald Trump. You ask the UN General Assembly. You ask the OAU. You ask the Islamic Council. You ask the Arab League. You go to the encyclopedia. So they try to make life hell for us, but thanks to the people of Eden Prairie, the damage was minimal.
And then Operation Metro Surge geared up in December. Citizens and legal immigrants with accents and color were targeted. Many retreated to their homes. Minnesota became a worldwide story.
People stopped going to work, which causes a lot of problems. They cannot pay their rent. Kids cannot go to school. Even if they go to school, they cannot go to recess outside. They just made life hell for us. And what are they getting out of it? Yeah, I'm more powerful than you. Oh, we know that. So, but we'll get over this one. Somalis are very resilient. They fled their country, came through all those refugee camps, crossed oceans. So this is just another nightmare in their book. When we left Somalia, we went to Europe, Australia, Canada, America, Middle East. If you go to Africa, from Mombasa, Kenya, all the way to South Africa, coast to coast, you'll see, if you travel, you'll see every village has a Somali shopkeeper, Somali truck driver, Somali teacher. They are very resilient people. And I'm sure we'll survive through this one and we'll come out. But I just don't know why he's picking on us. It's very frustrating, but I give kudos to the Minnesota people. And that will be a lesson in the future for the rest of the nation.
What do you think about the allegations that the Trump administration and the MAGA people are saying about the Somali community?
Well, Jeff, the two main accusations are Somalis are fraudulent. It's false. If you look at the accusation, there was 52 Somalis indicted for feeding our future scheme. The money came from DHS, went to a white lady, Amy Park. Somalis were the third tier. They were recruited, and they got some money. We have nothing to do with feeding our future. 99% of Somalis don't have nothing to do with it, but yet we are getting collective punishment. We got banks sending to 60 Somali companies. We no longer want to bank with you. What did we do wrong? Oh, we have the choice. You didn't do nothing wrong, but we have the choice to drop your account. We have YouTubers attacking us in our businesses. We are under attack just because Trump said, let's get rid of these guys. Okay, that's one thing. Let's see who's accusing us of fraud. Trump was convicted 34 times on felony fraud. His Trump organization was charged 17 times with fraud. He pardoned from jail 1,800 criminals, fraudsters, drug traffickers, rapists. He pardoned them. So let's level the playing field, please. Mark my word, Somalis will be here long after he's gone. Minnesota showed us its true colors. When we needed them the most, they circled the wagon around us. They protected us. They gave their lives protecting us. When he declared war on us, it was the people of Minnesota who saved us. True to their Christian values, love thy neighbor.
Thanks for being with us. Let's keep our eyes on the prize. We'll see you next time.
Democratic Visions is handcrafted by volunteers from Eden Prairie, Hopkins, Minnetonka, Edina, and Bloomington. Watch us on select cable systems and our YouTube channel.